Greetings, elect of the Most High. Welcome back to the Messianic Torah Observer. I'm Rod Thomas, coming to you on Preparation Day, the 21st day of the 11th month of Yah's biblical calendar year. And that translates into February 2nd, 2024 on the pagan Roman calendar. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to fellowship with me as we prepare to enter Yah's Sabbath. And as always, beloved, it is my hope, trust, and prayer that this installment of TMTO finds you, your families, and your fellowships well and blessed. This is the call for God's people to be jealous with His jealousy. This will be my thoughts and reflections on the 118th reading in our 3-year Torah reading cycle. As has been my custom for the past year or so, I posted my thoughts and reflections on Torah Reading 117 in written format on the MessianicTorahObserver.org. And I'll put the link to that post in this week's transcript for your reference. As it turns out, this week's reading is a direct carryover from last week's reading. And that reading included the story of Phineas. Some pronounce his name as Phineas, but we'll go with Phineas for now, just to make things kind of equal and consistent throughout this post. So that reading, 117, included the story of Phineas. He was the son of Eleazar, the high priest at that time. And he was executing a couple he witnessed engaged in the heinous and abominable act of Baal of Peor worship, or Baal of Peor worship. And we'll get a little into what Baal or Baal of Peor worship involved in just a moment. Jehovah, our Elohim, reacted favorably to Phinehas' righteous act, describing Phinehas as being jealous with his jealousy. And we will talk about what that means in just a few. As a reward, Jehovah conferred upon Phinehas and his seed his covenant of peace, which we will also discuss a little later in this post. Before we can discuss Jehovah's reaction to and actions towards Phinehas, I want to return to last week's reading, that being 117, and look at Phinehas' actions from a couple of perspectives. This will help us establish some context for our discussion this week, as well as possibly answer some questions that may crop in our minds as it relates to the story's details. I will read the last 4 verses of last week's reading, which should set the table for our discussion today. Found in Numbers, chapter 25, verses 6 through 9. And the English Standard Version reads, "And behold, one of the people of Israel came and brought a Midianite woman to his family." And that person being Zimri, the Baal of Peor worshiping Israelite. Continuing, "in the sight of Moses and in the sight of the whole congregation of the people of Israel, while they were weeping in the entrance of the tent of meeting." Verse 7, "When Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, saw it, he rose and left the congregation and took a spear in his hand and went after the man of Israel into the chamber and pierced both of them, the man of Israel and the woman through her belly." Now, their names being later given in our text today as Zimri, the Israelite, and Cosbi, the Midianite woman. Continuing, "Thus the plague on the people of Israel was stopped." In verse 9, "Nevertheless, those who died by the plague were 24,000. So what is the background to this tragic event? As mentioned in Reading 117, while we were encamped in Shittim, along the border of Moab, we had devolved as a people into unimaginable apostasy. Specifically, we had given ourselves over to Baal of Peor worship. Now, this form of Baal worship was especially heinous and offensive. And without getting too graphic, it incorporated open sex acts as a feature of our worship. Recall in chapter 25, verse 1, that besides our rendering sacrifices and bowing down to Baal, we began to, quote, whore with the daughters of Moab, end quote. That was the English Standard Version rendering. So our apostasy wasn't only about us committing fornication and adultery with the women of Moab, as so often emphasized in certain teachings. It was more about us engaging in adultery and fornication as part of our worship of Baal of Peor. Moshe described us as having, quote, yoked ourselves to Baal of Peor. Now, the Septuagint offers a slightly different optic and logistic to this story that differs slightly from the way the English Standard Version and other Masoretic-based texts render this story. These two differences add a little more texture to the story that I believe we need to consider before going further into our study. Let's look at Numbers chapter 25, again, verses 6 through 9. And we're going to be looking at it through the lens of the English Septuagint, the Lexham English Septuagint. And beginning at verse 6, it reads, "And behold," and pay particular attention to this, "behold, a man of the sons of Israel," the sons of Israel being a native-born Israeli, "went and brought his brother being Adelphos, or a son of the same mother," Adelphos in the Greek of the Septuagint, "a man of the sons of Israel went and brought his brother in front of Moses and before the entire congregation of the sons of Israel. And they were weeping," they being the congregation of Israel. "They were weeping at the entrance of the tent of testimony." Verse 7, "And seeing this, Phineas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, the priest, rose up out of the midst of the congregation and took a barbed lance in his hand." Verse 8, and here is another part you need to pay particular attention to. "He," Phineas, "went in after the Israelite man into the furnace." The Greek term in the Septuagint for furnace is kaminos. Kaminos, which means a kiln for smelting, for baking, for burning earthenware and bricks. So Phineas went in after the Israelite man into the furnace and pierced both of them, both the Israelite man and the woman, through her womb. Then the plague was ceased from the sons of Israel. Verse 9, now those who died in the plague were 24,000. Okay, let's look at this thing. So the Septuagint records show that an unnamed Israeli man brought his biological brother, if we go by the raw reading of the text, and introduced her to a Midianite woman in clear view of Moshe and the entire congregation of Israel. Remember, as this incident is playing out, because of our apostasy, Yah's wrath had manifested throughout our encampment as a deadly plague. Numbers chapter 25, verse 8. And so, as a result, Moshe and the congregation of Yisrael, presumably those who had not yoked themselves to Baal of Peor worship, had assembled at the entrance of the tent of testimony to weep and petition Jehovah for mercy. Chapter 25, verse 6. The text described Yah as being, quote, incensed with wrath, end quote, against us. Now, the JPS, the Jewish Publication Society rendering, which is a Masoretic-based text, describes the situation here where, quote, one of the Israelites came and brought a Midianite woman over to his companions in the sight of Moses and the whole Israelite community, who were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And this is the NJPS English translation of Numbers chapter 25, verse 6. Now, the nuance to the storyline suggests that there was at least one member of our congregation, possibly more, we don't know, that was actively promoting Baal of Peor sex worship to us. Now, this individual ends up pairing Zimri with this Midianite prostitute whose name we later learn is Cosby. In other words, this unnamed man was acting in the capacity of this woman's pimp, and he was engaging in such heinous and disgusting activity amid a raging deadly plague and in plain view of Moshe, and the righteous remnant of Israel. Imagine that. So, and this shows that there are no limits to the wicked intent of the human heart, such that even amid Yah's wrath, man will pursue evil. Can you imagine what the Great Tribulation is going to be like? Jehovah describes the human heart as being what? Desperately wicked. Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9. The second nuance I need to point out to you is that the Septuagint rendering records that outraged and impassioned Phineas, again, the son of Eleazar, the high priest at this time, followed the couple into the furnace, it reads, and ran them both through with a barbed lance, that is, a spear or javelin. Interestingly, the JPS records Phineas followed the couple, quote, into the chamber and stabbed both of them, the Israelite and the woman, through the belly, end quote. And this is Numbers chapter 25, verse 8, the NJPS English translation. Now, I don't know about you, but the various teachings I've listened to in this story have always led me to believe that Phineas executed this couple inside Zimri's personal tent or dwelling. However, these two texts make me question this thinking. We know the assembled congregation at the entrance to the tent of meeting saw this couple go into a chamber, according to the JPS, which J.H. Hertz in his Torah Haftorah defines as, quote, the inner division of the large vaulted tents that were used as the apartment of the woman. And that's page 679 of J.H. Hertz's Torah Haftorah, and or a place that housed a furnace, as in the Septuagint. So a chamber and a furnace. Possibly a tent that members of our congregation erected for the expressed purpose of Baal of Peor worship that may have also housed an altar of some sort, by which worshipers would render sacrifices unto Baal of Peor in conjunction with their abominable sex acts. Regardless, this is the place that Phineas does them both in, and it doesn't appear to be Zimri's personal dwelling. In his Studies in the Torah, the book of Numbers, Tim Haig puts forth the theory that Zimri, or a fellow Israeli, who was in this passage, in our early passages, was not named, but Zimri is this Israeli that is introduced to this woman, this Midianite woman. But Haig puts forth this theory that Zimri accompanies Cosby, and this is the Midianite woman or the sex cult prostitute's name, Cosby. Zimri accompanies Cosby into the tent of meeting to engage in their abominable act of Baal of Peor worship. Mr. Haig supports this theory by citing that this event took place, quote, in the sight of Moses and all Israel who were weeping at the doorway of the tent of meeting, and that Phineas went into the tent when he struck them through, end quote. Haig further writes that is the couple, were engaging in this fertility ritual within the holy place, and the sin of Baal Peor had entered into the very sanctuary of Hashem. Haig further supports his theory by mentioning a little background information on Torah's stance on capital punishment. This is interesting. He supports his theory by citing that our congregation cannot administer capital punishment without first having the alleged criminal face a court of judges who would render a capital punishment verdict based upon the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. And once the court renders a guilty verdict, it then falls to the witnesses to cast the first stones in that individual's public execution. And this is recorded in Deuteronomy chapter 17, verses 6 through 11. We see, however, in the case of Zimri and Cosby, that Phineas did not adhere to this judicial process. Instead, Phineas summarily executes the couple without deference to the law. So we must answer the question of why Yah openly favored Phineas for carrying out this summary execution outside of these Torah provisions. Did Yah make an exception for Phineas because he acted with Yah's jealousy or zeal or passion? And in my mind's eye, this is where the theory that the couple engaged in their abominable act within the confines of the sanctuary makes some sense. Not saying I agree with it entirely, but I can see how Haig's theory could conceivably be true. For all intents and purposes, the tabernacle was sort of its own country within the congregation of Israel, if you know what I mean. Consequently, there is a separate set of rules governing tabernacle operations. The Levites alone were responsible for overseeing all aspects of tabernacle operations, including enforcing the maintenance of its utter sanctity. I refer you to Numbers chapter 1, verse 53. And the KJV reads, "But the Levites shall pitch round about the tabernacle of testimony, that there be no wrath upon the congregation of the children of Israel. And the Levites shall keep the charge of the tabernacle of testimony." Now, this being the case, and if the offense did in fact take place within the confines of the tabernacle proper, then Phineas fulfilled his duty as a Levitical priest. He would have upheld the sanctity of the tabernacle as Yah tasked the Levites with doing. I, however, have a hard time believing that the couple engaged in their abominable act within the tabernacle proper. Given all that we've discussed up to this point, I will concede that the traditional story of the couple engaging in Baal of Peor sex worship took place in Zimri's tent is not accurate. It seems to me that the couple did what they did, and Phineas did what he did, in a tent that members of our congregation set up for Baal of Peor worship that was proximal, that is, close to the sanctuary, maybe within the confines of the sanctuary courtyard even. I can't imagine that Moses, and the attending Levites would have permitted anyone other than a qualified Aaronic priest to enter the tent of meeting in the first place. But if we had erected a tent of Baal worship somewhere near the sanctuary grounds, Phineas would have been legally justified in dispatching, that is, killing the couple the way he did. But that's just my thoughts and reflections on this matter. I'm curious what you may think. How do you read and understand these passages? What spiritual applications can you draw from this part of our story that will maybe enhance your walk in Messiah? Now that we have this, this background established before us, we can delve into this week's reading, which is contained in Numbers chapter 25, verses 10 through chapter 26 of Numbers, verse 51. For our time together here, the remaining time we have, we will only discuss Numbers chapter 25, verses 10 through 15. So you can breathe easy. We're not going to do all those verses. So it'll be just these 6 verses, verses 10 through 15 of Numbers chapter 25. Let's read them. We're going to be reading this time from the Scriptures ISR rendering. And it reads, "And Jehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aharon the priest, has turned back my wrath from the children of Israel, because he was ardent with my ardor in their midst." That is, Phinehas was jealous. He was passionate. He was zealous with my jealousy, my passion, my zeal, so that I did not consume the children of Israel in my ardor. Verse 12, "Therefore say, see, I am giving him my covenant of peace. And it shall be to him and to his seed after him a covenant of an everlasting priesthood. Because he was ardent," I don't know why they like this word ardent in this translation, but anyway, "because he was ardent for his Elohim and made atonement for the children of Israel." Verse 14, "And the name of the man of Israel who was struck with the Midianite woman was Zimri, son of Salu, a leader of a father's house among the Shimonites." Verse 15, "And the name of the Midianite woman who was struck was Cosbi, the daughter of Zur. He was head of the people of a father's house in Midian." Again, that was Numbers chapter 25, verses 10 through 15, the Scriptures ISR rendering. So Yah tells Moshe that Phinehas' righteous actions turned his righteous anger, his wrath, away from us. Again, remember, we were amid a plague because of our apostasy. That goes back to our reading study of 117. So Yah describes Phinehas' actions as that of being jealous with his jealousy. Jealous with his, Yah's jealousy. Phinehas' jealousy prevented our total destruction. So who was Phinehas? Well, he was the son of the current high priest Eleazar. 1 Chronicles chapter 6, verses 4 through 15. So he was an Aaronic priest serving under his high priestly father, Eleazar. Let's talk about what Jehovah meant by describing Phinehas as being jealous with his jealousy. Phinehas remained in solidarity with Jehovah amid great apostasy. R. Dennis Cole describes this as, quote, "the like-mindedness of Phinehas with that of Yahweh," end quote. The Hebrew term for jealous or jealousy as used in our text is kana. Kana. Q-A-N-A. In some renderings, you may see it spelled as Q-A-N-N-A with an apostrophe at the last A. Now, kana means to express kina, Q-I-N apostrophe A-H, kina. Kana means to express kina, or that is zeal or passion against something or against the offensive actions of another. So here in our reading, Phineas, quote, Phineas expressed God's own zeal. He acted on his being Jehovah's behalf, end quote. And this is a quote from Baruch A. Levine in his Numbers, a new translation with introduction and commentary. It can also be described, this kana, as, quote, to become deeply impassioned, to become furiously jealous, end quote. These are quotes from R. Dennis Cole in his commentary addition to the New American Commentary. The word from this idiomatic sense would carry the same emotion as that of a husband, if you can conceive this. The same sense as a husband who believes or who knows that his wife has been cheating on him. And this is illustrated in Numbers chapter 5, verses 11 through 31. And this could also be reversed. This concept or understanding or belief or knowledge that one's husband is cheating on her. I know we tend to only focus on the man, but this also applies to the woman. The woman may feel her husband is cheating on her. So it's the same passion, this kana, this impassioned feeling, this passion, this zeal, this jealousy. Such a one is then sorely jealous towards his wife, jealous towards her husband. Thus, in like manner, Jehovah demands faithfulness from his bride. Exodus chapter 20, verses 4 and 5. So any such transgression by Yah's set-apart people to the contrary, such as whoring after false gods, as in the case of Baal of Peor, is subject to Jehovah's holy and righteous wrath, which we've seen manifested in the form of plagues and summary executions of members of our community throughout our storyline in recent weeks. Kana, jealousy, or passion, or zeal for the things of Jehovah, as expressed in our reading, is not unique to our reading passage. Eliyahu, declares to Jehovah when asked why he was hiding out in a cave. He states, I have been very zealous. Kana, for Yahweh, the God of hosts. Being zealous, kana, I am zealous, kina, for Jehovah, because. And he is zealous, he is kana, because the Israelites have forsaken your covenant. They forsook Yah's covenant. They have demolished your altars, Jehovah, and they have killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left over, and they seek to take my life. That's why I'm hiding out in this cave. 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 10. So Elijah had kana. Then we have over in Zechariah, Jehovah himself declares his zealousness, his jealousy over Jerusalem and Zion. Over in Zechariah chapter 8, verse 2, thus says Yahweh of hosts, I am exceedingly jealous. I am Kana for Zion. I am jealous for it with great wrath. I'm zealous for Zion, for Jerusalem with great wrath. So here Yah declares out of his zeal, his jealousy, his passion, his kana for Jerusalem and Zion that he will destroy, aka Kilah, those who have destroyed her. Because of Phineas's zealous act, Yah established with him and his seed a new covenant. This new covenant Yah referred to as his covenant of peace. That is, Bariti Shalom. The covenant of peace was to be an everlasting priesthood built upon Phineas's zealousness for his Elohim and the atonement he made on our behalf that day. Yah reckoned Phinehas as righteous because of this one righteous act. Psalm chapter 106, verses 28 through 31, because of his Kenah. Mattathias of the Maccabees fame, upon his deathbed, called his sons to the same level of zealousness for Torah and the covenant that Phinehas possessed. I'm referring you over to 1 Maccabees chapter 2, verse 54. And it reads, Now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the law, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. Phinehas, our father, in being zealous and fervent, obtained the covenant of an everlasting priesthood. So it was this zealousness that propelled the Maccabees to defeating the great Macedonian military. The Rule of the Blessings, a liturgical scroll from Qumran, calls for a renewal of the covenant of peace to be placed over the Essene community. We're talking about the Dead Sea Scroll, folks, the Essenes over in Qumran. By virtue of his Aaronic lineage, Phinehas was already assured the priestly privileges. His righteous act and the ensuing eternal covenant of peace confirmed his divinely appointed priestly destiny. Phinehas' priesthood would later be referred to as the Zadokite priesthood, recorded in Ezekiel chapter 44, verses 15 and 16. Phinehas' priestly dynasty was chosen by Jehovah to serve him in his house of prayer forever. Ezekiel chapter 44, verses 15 and 16, and the Lexham English Bible reads, But the Levitical priest, the descendants of Zadok, who cared for the responsibility of my sanctuary, when the Israelites went astray from me, they will approach me to serve me, and they will stand before me to offer to me fat and blood, declares the Lord Yahweh. Verse 16. They shall come to my sanctuary, and they shall approach my table to serve me, and they will observe my requirement. Beyond this talk of being zealous or passionate for those things that Jehovah is zealous or passionate about, the covenant of peace that emerged from Phinehas' act is really about an everlasting priesthood. Berit kahunat holam. This everlasting priesthood was to be headed and inspired by the zealous spirit of Phinehas. It should be noted that Yah placed no stipulations upon Phinehas nor his seed in order for this covenant to remain in force. Some would label this as a unilateral or non-conditional covenant, although in reality, Yah did not cut a truly conditional covenant with us. He never did. All of Yah's covenant promises are irrevocable and permanent. despite what we do to infringe upon or to transgress the tenets of those covenants. The permanence of this covenant was reiterated by Jehovah when we, went into Babylonian captivity. I refer you to Isaiah chapter 54, verse 10. In the Lexham English Bible reads, "For the mountains may depart, and the hills may sway, but my faithfulness shall not depart from you, and my covenant of peace shall not sway, says Yahweh, who has compassion on you." That same covenant of peace will continue even into the millennial kingdom. Ezekiel chapter 34, verses 24 and 25. And the Lexham reads again, "And I, Yahweh, will be for them as God, and my servant David will be a leader in the midst of them. I, Yahweh, I have spoken." Verse 25. "And I will make them a covenant of peace. And I will put an end to wild animals from the land, and they will dwell in the desert safely, and they will sleep in the forest." The descendants of Phineas, who are privileged of Jehovah to render priestly services unto him in the millennial kingdom, were the sons of Zadok. Zadok means righteous. Zadok is derived from the Hebrew noun, "the Lord is righteous." So who was Zadok? He was a Levitical priest who was loyal to King David. 2 Samuel chapter 8, verse 17, and 1 Chronicles chapter 6, verses 3 through 8. Zadok continued to serve as a Cohen, or a priest, into Solomon's reign. During David's reign as king, Ithamar's descendants served as high priest. And the scriptures show Zadok anointed Solomon and took on the role of high priest. 1 Kings chapter 1, verses 39 through 45. However, Ithamar's corrupted descendants, or his corrupt descendants, coupled with Zadok's abiding loyalty to Kings David and Solomon, led to the high priesthood being passed on to Zadok's descendants. This change in the high priesthood passed on to Zadok's descendants. This change in the high priesthood was not a knee-jerk reaction to the corruption that had crept into the priestly ranks. In response to the corruption of Eli's priestly line, Yah declared he would raise up for himself a reliable priest. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 35, hinting at, pointing toward Zadok and the Zadokim, the sons of Zadok. Thus, the Zadokite high priestly dynasty emerged. We often refer to these righteous descendants of Zadok as Zadokim, or the Zadokites. Despite several texts certifying Zadok descended from Aaron and Eleazar, other texts seem to suggest otherwise. And some scholars allege that Zadok was not of Aaron's and Eleazar's lineage, and that he descended from an unknown line that certain scribes have gone to great lengths to erase. Now, I personally doubt Zadok descended from any priestly line other than Eleazar's and Phinehas's. We see in our reading this week that Jehovah promised Phinehas an everlasting priesthood of peace. Zadok and his priestly dynasty matches to a T the zeal, the kanah for the priestly office, as originated by Phinehas. Furthermore, Jehovah, through his prophet Ezekiel, certified Zadok descended from Aaron and Eleazar. Ezekiel chapter 4, verses 46. The steadfast loyalty of Zadok's sons to the exacting ways of Jehovah and their priestly responsibilities caught Jehovah's attention. Through his prophet Ezekiel, Yah appointed the sons of Zadok to be his select priestly line to serve him in his son's millennial kingdom. Ezekiel chapter 40, verse 46. In the Lexham English Bible reads, "And the chamber with its face to the north is for the priests who are taking care of the responsibility of the altar. They are the descendants of Zadok, the ones who approach from among the descendants of Levi to Yahweh to serve him." Ezekiel chapter 43, verse 19. "And you must give the Levitical priests who are from the offspring of Zadok, the ones coming near me, declares the Lord Yahweh, to serve me, a bull, a calf as a sin offering." Ezekiel chapter 44, verses 15 and 16. "But the Levitical priest, the descendants of Zadok, who cared for the responsibility of my sanctuary when the Israelites went astray from me, they will approach me to serve me, and they will stand before me to offer to me fat and blood, declares the Lord Yahweh. They shall come to my sanctuary, and they shall approach my table to serve me, and they will observe my requirements." Ezekiel chapter 48, verses 11 and 12. "To the priest, the ones being consecrated from the descendants of Zadok, who took care of my service, and who did not go astray when the Israelites went astray, just as the Levites went astray. And it will be for them a special gift from the contribution of the land as a most holy object next to the territory of the Levites." So what we see playing out here in these various verses is evidence that Yah will surely keep his covenant promise to Phinehas of an eternal covenant of peace. Loyal and zealous Zadok didn't just serve as a priest during David's rule, he also served as a fierce warrior in David's army. And Jehovah had taken Saul's rule over Israel away from Saul and gave it over to David, as recorded in 1 Chronicles chapter 12. And we find in 1 Chronicles and Josephus, in his Antiquities, book 7, record of Zadok serving David as a military commander in battles against Israel's enemies, such as against the Jebusites and the Philistines. The priest Joshua, son of Jehozadak, and Ezra, these that accompanied us in our return to the land from Babylonian captivity, were Zadok descendants. And this is documented in Ezra chapter 7, verses 1 through 7. Even during the time of our captivity, these sons of Zadok remained true to their priestly calling. As a result, Yah's hand is said to have been upon Ezra. Ezra chapter 7, verse 6. The zeal of the Zadokite priest remained through the time of the Maccabees, after which political intrigue all but forced them underground and out of service. And some believe, as I, that the priestly descendants of Zadok abandoned the second temple in Jerusalem and took up residence in Qumran about the 1st century, maybe even a little before. The Essenes of Qumran, as evident in some of their sacred texts, or the famous Dead Sea Scrolls, extolled the legitimacy and the virtue of the Zadokite priesthood. And some scholars speculate that the Qumran Essenes included members of the Zadokite priesthood. Now, I find this theory to be plausible, given the zeal we know the Essenes held for Jehovah and his ways, because these believed that the Jerusalem temple establishment was irreparably corrupt. So these Zadokim uprooted themselves from the politics and corruption of the Jerusalem temple establishment, and then they resettled over in Qumran, where they safeguarded the oracles of Jehovah, famously referred to today as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Interestingly, Some have linked the first century Jewish sect of the Sadducees with the Zadokite priestly line. Certain scholars have declared that the title Sadducee is derived from Zadok, as referenced by Mark Allen Powell in HarperCollins Bible Dictionary. Michael Rood, in his Gospel Chronology, is a firm advocate of this thinking. We know from the gospel record that the first century priestly line, that is of the Sadducees, was indeed irreparably corrupt. So to think that the Sadducees were the same or of the same timber, let's say, as the righteous sons of Zadok is suspect to me. I tend to side with the righteous Zadok line, finding her last recorded location in Qumran to be more in line with the zealous character of Phineas, to be the most plausible theory of the two. Baruch A. Levine, in his commentary on the book of Numbers, made the bold move of renaming the covenant of peace to that of a covenant of fellowship. Levine writes, "Behold, I am granting him my covenant, fellowship. That is to say, my covenant will consist of fellowship." And that is in his writings on the book of Numbers, chapters 21 through 36, a new translation with introduction and commentary. When I first came across Levine's statement about the covenant of peace being a covenant of fellowship, I rejected it outright, but then I reflected upon it. Later, it became clear to me that indeed one of Jehovah's deepest desires, his goals, his purpose, his will is to establish a relationship and to be in loving and peaceful fellowship with us, his chosen ones. Yet, when we are in a rebellious state of being, as we were during our time of apostasy in Shittim, there can be no such fellowship. When we choose Jehovah and his ways over that of the world and its ways, we have the privilege of partaking of this covenant of peace, aka this covenant of fellowship. Jehovah is zealous. He is kana about his standards and about his people, remaining true to him and his ways. And he described himself to us as being a jealous, a kana God, a consuming fire. Exodus chapter 34, verse 14, and Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 24. And he commanded and informed us that, and this is in Deuteronomy chapter 5, verses 9 through 6:15. That is Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 9, all the way up through chapter 6 of Deuteronomy, verse 15. We're not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read just verse 9. I don't know why I put that all there, but Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 9, and it reads, "Thou shalt not bow down thyself unto them, nor serve them," that is, them being false gods. "For I, the Lord, thy God," that is, I, Jehovah, thy Elohim, am a kana God, a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. That was the KJV rendering. You see, we cannot truly walk in covenant with Jehovah unless we are zealous, passionate, jealous, kana about the things that he is zealous, passionate, jealous about. There must be a singleness of heart and mind between us and our Elohim for there to be true fellowship. The prophet asked a key question of us as Yah prepared to punish us for our iniquities. He asked, can two walk together except they agree? Amos chapter 3, verse 3. And of course, the answer to this critical question is no, they can't. We cannot be in fellowship with the creator of the universe when we are at odds with him and his ways. That's why he brought a devastating plague upon us in response to our disgusting apostasy with Baal of Peor. We had broken fellowship with him because we sought after and worshiped Baal. We became Kana for the things of Baal. Moshe described us as being yoked, consecrated unto Baal of Peor. So our alliances, our zeal, our Kana shifted from Jehovah to Baal of Peor. And that's no bueno. Because it wasn't until Phineas displayed such burning Kana, burning zeal for Yah and his ways, and he stood against our apostasy, that Jehovah stayed the plague and restored fellowship or shalom between us and him. Master Yehoshua possessed such passion, zeal, jealousy, Kana for his father and for his father's house, the temple. So much so that he cleansed the Temple Mount of the merchants and money changers, as recorded in John chapter 2, verses 14 through 17. You see, such Kana was prophesied to be an established character trait of the Messiah. Psalm chapter 69, verses 8 and 9. I have become a stranger to my brothers and a foreigner to my mother's sons, because the zeal for your house, Jehovah, my Father, your temple, has consumed me, and the reproaches of those reproaching you have fallen on me. If our consuming aim is to make it into the kingdom, that certainly is mine, then we must imitate our Master Yeshua in every way possible. This includes being Kana, being zealous for the things of Jehovah. Our Kana for the things of Jehovah must consume us as it did Yehoshua, our master, as it did Phineas, son of Eleazar. And if we find ourselves with such burning passion, burning Kana for the things and ways of Jehovah, he will honor us by cutting and maintaining a covenant of peace, a covenant of fellowship with us. So how do we get to the place in our walk with Messiah that we possess such a burning, consuming passion for the things and ways of Jehovah? Oh, glory be to God. Well, we must seek. We must pursue Jehovah's righteousness and his kingdom. And the easiest way of accomplishing this is to believe Master Yeshua and to commit to walking exclusively in his ways. And the only way we can accomplish that is to devour Yah's word, devour Yeshua's teaching, pray without ceasing, obey his instructions in righteousness, and listen to his voice, because Yah's ways are our master's ways. In so doing, we begin to develop a deep and abiding relationship with Master Yehoshua and his Father. And over time, we will become jealous, Kana, with Jehovah's jealousy, Jehovah's Kina, because we are being transformed into the image of Master Yeshua. Romans chapter 8, verse 29, and Colossians chapter 3, verse 10. Consequently, Yeshua is the splitting image of his Father. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 1. Now more than at any time in history, Jehovah's elect must be Kana with Jehovah's Kina. Numbers chapter 25, verse 11. You see, the world has devolved to such a state that that which is good is now considered by the world as evil. And that which is evil, the world now sees as good. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. And Yah declares his fierce anger upon those who embrace such foolishness. And so it falls to us, Yah's chosen ones, to jealously walk in his righteous ways, to teach the world to do so as well. Because Yah is counting on us to image him in this fallen, corrupt world. He's given us all we need to accomplish this. He's given us his Holy Spirit and his word. And if we are willing to hold the line, to stand, using the resources he's placed at our disposal, we can't help but be victorious and forever in peaceful fellowship covenant with our Creator. The apostle wrote to the Messianic Roman assembly. Romans chapter 8, verses 35 through 39. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation, or distress, or persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or peril, or sword? As it is written, for thy sake we are killed all the day long. We are accounted as sheep for the slaughter. Nay, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. For I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Have a blessed Sabbath, beloved, and have an overcoming week in Yeshua Messiah. Take care.